Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Scoberg here with Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be back with Caleb Alford from the ARC of the Capital Area in Austin. And today, what we're going to be talking about is Medicaid waivers. I always start by talking about a little housekeeping items here. We are in webinar mode today, which means that we can't see you or hear you, but we know you're here and we're glad that you are here with us today. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. You are in the right place, and we hope to provide a lot of information and help for you on your journey as a parent or an individual with a disability, or maybe you're supporting somebody, maybe it's not a family member that has a disability, but we're glad you're here. So from a perspective, how we go about doing this, we invite you to put your questions in the chat box. I did get a number of write-in questions today. Thank you for those that sent those in. Some of them are really not related to our topic today, but I'm going to kind of address them, and I decided we're going to change it up a little bit, and I'm going to address those questions early on, and then we're going to dive into the material today. For those of you that are just joining us for the first time, Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. Our whole firm is nuanced in planning for special needs. We solve answers to questions of how much money do I need to fund a special needs trust? How and when should I apply for public benefits? How do I maintain those benefits and not lose them? How do I have money in the right buckets? We actually set up ABLE accounts. We do transition planning, a lot of holistic planning. We do a lot of advocacy by way of our webinars. And so if you're new to us, we have a Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that for free. There are over 500 webinars on that YouTube channel in planning for special needs. Every single topic that you could possibly think of is out there. Special needs trust, guardianship, SSI, Medicaid, when to apply, how does work affect SSI, there's so many topics out there. So we invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and check out the topics for the journey and kind of where you are in the planning process. We always like to mention, what the difference is between a special needs planner and an estate planning or a special needs attorney. They're actually two different jobs. So a lot of times people lump us all together. People will call me and say, I need to get a guardianship set up, or I'd like to set up a special needs trust. And then they call the attorney and say, I need to make sure that I have enough money that I could retire, and I'm still going to have enough money to fund the special needs trust. How much money do I need for the special needs trust? So what I like to say is that they're the paper and we're the money, okay? So the legal documents, you're going to have those. They're very important. The wills, the power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision-making agreement, special needs trust, guardianship. That is going to be your estate planning attorney. And not all attorneys are nuanced in special needs. And we would argue that because our situation with a loved one with a disability is specialized, it's important that you work with a specialist. And that is true as well as it relates to financial planning firms, specifically nuanced and special needs. And the reason that is so important is maintaining eligibility for state and public benefits is going to be super important. And sometimes when you're working with a generalist that doesn't have a background in special needs, they don't know about these guidelines and they accidentally mess you up. It's not intentional. It's just really important to work with those professionals. We partner with organizations, with attorneys all across the state and the country even, that are nuanced and working with special needs. We have a strong referral network. So if you have, if you need a recommendation, then we're happy to make one as it relates to that as well. So today, what we're talking about is, again, Medicaid waivers, SSI eligibility, preserving benefits. So we're going to talk about some of those things, but what I'm going to start out with today is a couple of questions. So one question says, the application process, information, benefits, and entitlements, income limitations. So when it comes to SSI, okay, If the individual is below age 18, it's based off of the parent's income and assets, not the child's. The Medicaid guidelines for assets in Texas is $2,000. Most states are $2,000. We do serve families all across the United States, not just in Texas, but the Medicaid guidelines are no more assets than $2,000 outside of an ABLE account or a special needs trust. So a state like California, their Medicaid limits are much higher. So if you're in another state, you can reach out to us specifically. We can help you as well. But so if it's under 18, it's based off of the parent's income and assets, not the child's. So even though your child is disabled, if they're under 18, you may have been denied before for SSI, A, because you make too much money, B, because you have more than $2,000 in your name, might be some of the reasons that they were denied. But when the child is over age 18, it's based off of their income and assets, not yours, for SSI and Medicaid. Now, people start getting confused about these Medicaid waivers because we're using that term Medicaid, and if it's based off of the parent's income and assets prior to them turning 18, well, that's not the case for the Medicaid waivers. Okay, so that is the case for SSI and the Medicaid that comes along with SSI, but it's not the case for Medicaid waivers. It's based off of the child's income and assets, not the parents, when they come up on the list. So even if you are affluent, you make a lot of money, the child is under age 18, if they come up on the list prior to turning age 18, it is based off of the child's income and assets, not yours. So we're going to take a deeper dive.
And Allison, we had a quick question on that. Are
Right.
there states like New York that don't have Medicaid limits or limits on assets for Medicaid?
All states have limits on assets for Medicaid. They are differing. It just depends on, again, what state you're in. But most states, there's a few outliers that have the asset limit higher than $2,000. And it's a ridiculously low number that hasn't been changed in like 40 or 50 years. And some people say, hey, I heard that that amount went up to $10,000. There is some proposed legislation for that, for the Medicaid asset limit to go up, but it has not passed. So for your state specifically, we would look into that a little bit further for you. The next question that we had was, how do you appeal an SSI denial? So it is common to be denied for SSI on the first go round. The first thing I would like to mention is that initially, when you apply, in general, most families are going to get a denial SSDI real quick, fast, and in a hurry because the kid has not paid into the system. SSDI is a different program than SSI. And that letter is very confusing because you think you're denied unilaterally for everything. What that letter does not say is that your SSI application is still pending. And in Texas, SSI applications are taking over a year right now. For processing, and it could be longer. So it's not a fast process, but you may quickly get an SSDI letter saying that they're denied. So I wanted you to know that. So appealing an SSI, first things first, when it comes to SSI, the Social Security Administration, if you get a letter from them, you're going to want to read this right away. All pages, even if it's really long. And when they are denied, you have 60 days to appeal that decision, and you need to appeal that decision in writing. And Caleb, you can put this in the chat box. There is a form, it's called an SSA 561. And the SSA 561 is the appeal form. So there's an actual form that you can download from the internet. I don't think they include it in the letter. But there is an actual form that you can download from the internet and file the appeal. And then we do have organizations that we partner with as well that may help you file the appeal. And in the appeal, there needs to be a material change in circumstance and additional information that maybe wasn't reviewed and why they were denied. So we can one-off on that at another time. So how to apply for Medicaid. Every state has so Medicaid is a federal program, but it's run by the states. Okay, so whatever state you're in, Medicaid is run by the state, and they have their own website for applying for Medicaid. So in Texas, that's going to be yourtexasbenefits.com. Okay, Your Texas Benefits, that's going to be where you apply for Medicaid, and you can do it online, and then you can check the boxes and it will automatically apply you for the programs that the individual may qualify for. There are Medicaid offices throughout Texas that you can go in person and apply as well. And there is something called the H1200 application. This is something that you can Google and download, and I'm speaking for Texas right now. You can download the Medicaid application, and it's a form fillable application that then you can upload in their system, or you can fax in or take into the local office as well. Someone says, I need help getting SSI for my daughter. You can one-off with us. We do have guidance on step-by-step of how and when to apply. There are some points that it is absolutely pointless to apply, because if the child's under age 18 and you have more than $2,000 in your name, you can have one house valued at any amount, you can have one car, and basically $2,000. Okay, so that is the guidelines. So if you have more than one car, if you have more than $2,000, and yes, they count the 401k money, and the child is under age 18, it's usually not beneficial to apply prior to them turning 18. Okay.
And Allison, I had a few questions in the chat that were relevant to that. One
Sure.
person asked, is it better to bring the appeal in person, or because they had the workers denied them without doing any work on the appeal for SSI, I believe it is, they're speaking on.
It depends on the nature of why the person was denied, on whether or not you may consider getting an attorney on your side on this. And they passed a new law, the Social Security Administration did, January 6th. I'm not sure that they have implemented it yet, that basically says that from now on, you're going to have an appointment to go into the Social Security Administration. So I would say there's probably no value in walking it in unless you get an appointment, if you're able to call and get an appointment. And the key is read those letters, submit those appeals on time. If you miss that window, unless you have a really good reason for missing that window, you're going to have to start the whole process all over again. So, and again,
I was going to share from our experience, we in the Travis County area, if you call the attorneys who help with appeals, they usually will let you know if there's even a chance for your appeal to be approved, and they'll decide if they'll let you know if you should even go with them as the attorneys or not.
And we have some really great attorneys that we work with that work on the SSI appeals that I can recommend. So if you need one, just reach out. So I think that's good. What else do we have in the chat box for questions?
We also have someone said that they have not applied yet for SSI. They have a son, I believe, who's 19. Can they apply for Medicaid only with the only income from their son and not their family's income?
If he's 19 and he is disabled, you could apply for Medicaid. You will probably have to identify and prove that he has a disability, and his income has to be lower than the threshold, which applying for that is like $967 a month. As long as his income is less than SSI, then he may be considered for Medicaid. But yes, you could apply.
And then the last one we had, someone just said, I think as a statement, you can write the appeal form, please. Not sure if it's a statement or not.
I don't know if you put it in the chat box, but it's the SSA 561.
Yes, and I put the link to the Social Security Administration's link too.
Okay, that's the notice of appeal, the SSA 561.
I'll put it again.
You can file an appeal with Medicaid if you're denied for Medicaid, and then there's the Ombudsman's office if you're getting the runaround. There are a lot of issues with Medicaid right now, and the Health and Human Services is who kind of governs that with Texas. So if you're having major issues with that, let us know on that. So just very confused about the whole Texas system, who qualifies for benefits, etc. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to be talking a little bit, we'll talk very briefly about 529 ABLE accounts. We have entire webinars on SSI. We have entire webinars on 529 ABLE accounts, entire webinars on special needs trust. The ABLE account and special needs trust are the places that you can have money above and beyond the $2,000 and still maintain your eligibility for Medicaid.
We had two more questions in the chat. Someone
Sure.
asked if income is greater, what other type of benefits do my special needs kids get what we could apply early on, and thank you.
So that is a loaded question, and it also depends on what state that you are in. One program that I like to tell people about is through, and all states have it, is vocational rehab, VR. All states have it, and ours goes through Texas Workforce Commission, the vocational rehab, and this is for kids ages 14 to 22, and then they have adult services 22 and beyond. It's designed to close the gap for the with the impediments to employment, and to help get them to work is basically what that program is. They have jobs. They have organizations that are known for working well with folks with disabilities. There's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of training. And it's state and federally funded program, and it is specifically for people with individuals with disabilities, and services start as early as 14. So that is one program that I like to tell people about, that maybe they have younger children that wouldn't qualify for other things for a little while.
Perfect. And then the last thing is to clarify, my adult disabled son's income is the only amount considered for SSI and Medicaid. Also, I was accidentally not putting the chat in the right spot, so I will send that in the chat again for those links.
Okay, yes, it is. And even if the kid is under guardianship, right? If they're an adult, if they're over age 18, it's based off of the child's income and assets, not the parents. Even if they live in your house, even if you claim them on the tax return, even if they're under full guardianship, it is based off of the kid's income and assets once they're over age 18. So one person says on RSDI, soon Medicare, but need income to be reduced so he can be QMB and not QI1. And that's basically what this person is talking about, is there is premium assistance for Medicare. And oftentimes they're going to get kicked off of this when they move over to RSDI, when they move over from SSI to RSDI, and it depends on what the amount is. It also depends if the person is working. And I haven't seen many things where it was covered. If the amount is too much, it's just too much to qualify. There's a lot of different programs. There's like SLB and QMB, and there's a lot of different premium assistance programs, but you have to hit the criteria, and there's really not any one-offs on that I'm aware of. So one person just said private insurance, and so there was not a further question on that, but what I wanted to mention on this, because I think it's worthy of mentioning, first of all, private insurance in general ends when a person's kid turns 26. There are ways to keep your kid on your insurance past age 26 if their disability started prior to that time. I am a fan of doing this. Your private insurance is always going to be better than Medicaid, and it may be better than Medicare. Okay, so in order to keep that, you're going to have to call the HR department to find out where the form is. You might get transferred 15 times. Not very many people know about this. Don't take no for an answer. Get the HR director, get the head of whoever your insurance company is to get the form. Usually has to be signed off on by a doctor. So that would make them, if they were getting SSI and Medicaid, they'd have Medicaid. Medicaid is always the last payer. The primary insurance would be the first payer. Medicaid would be the secondary payer. And depending on the size of the employer, if you have Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance, either Medicare or your private insurance will be primary, and whichever one wasn't will be the secondary. And then of course, Medicaid will be the last payer. I'm really a big fan of doing this, again, because your private health insurance is always going to be better, and it's going to give you freedom of choice to take your kids where they need to go. Most of our kids see specialists, right? And we don't want to see some random specialist that only takes Medicaid. That's not where we tend to take our kids. So that's why you want choices on that. So we would like to know when we could be eligible for Medicaid waiver or other future plans. We're going to talk about that. So the big thing about these Medicaid waivers is Texas, unfortunately, has a very long waiting list. And For years we've been talking about a 17-year waiting list, and now they're suggesting it might be 20 to 22 years at this point. And that is how long it will be before an individual that's getting on the list now will ever get a Medicaid waiver at this time. So the first thing that I'd like to say is I know that sounds discouraging, but other states had very, very long waiting lists, and then they passed a bill and they got everybody off the waiting list. So don't think never. It's not exciting right now, but it could turn around. And the other thing that I want to say is for a lot of people that are on here that are from out of state, a lot of states don't have a waiting list at all. There are Medicaid waivers right now that are available. So what is this Medicaid waiver anyway? A Medicaid waiver, all states have them, and they are designed to waive off some of the costs of care for caring for an individual that has a disability to keep them in home and community-based services. So all states have them, and all states' Medicaid waivers are a little bit different. Some states may have a very specific waiver for people that are on the autism spectrum, or maybe the Down syndrome, or maybe a traumatic brain injury, for example. All states are a little bit different, but they're all designed to waive off some of the cost of care for caring for an individual with a disability to keep them in home and community-based services. So let's kind of dig in to some of our.
Allison, we had a
Sure.
few more questions, but do you want to wait till the end to answer those, or do you want to?
Let's just take them real quick, and then we'll dive
Okay,
into this. We're okay on
perfect.
time.
The next question I had was any financial support programs during school years for kids with autism spectrum disorder? And I'm assuming this is before 18 plus programming.
So what I'm gonna say is our veteran parents out here that know about that, why don't you put that in the chat box? I have heard about school vouchers. I've heard about a $1,500 credit for a kid with a disability, but I'm not sure that that's a thing anymore. I have heard of some schools not being able to serve the needs, some public schools not being able to serve the needs of the individual, which thereby was approved to go to another school
Through
that
fate
was
not being followed.
more appropriate or things like that.
Perfect. And then the next thing on here, if we change actually, what was the form called to stay on with parents' private insurance?
There's not a name for it, and I'm sorry, but when you're calling your HR department, you're saying, I understand that I can keep my disabled adult child on my group health plan past age 26 because their disability started prior to that time and they are a dependent. I understand that there's some form that I need to fill out and have the doctor sign to be able to do this, and I'm trying to get the process. And I'm warning you, you literally may be transferred 15 times. Most people don't know that this is a thing. So when you're calling that other person on the phone, they may have never got this call before, and they may tell you, no, that doesn't exist. It does exist. So you just gotta politely get to the next person and go up the food chain. And every company is going to be a little bit different because not all companies have the same insurance companies. Some companies are self-insured, some are not. And so it's going to be a little bit of a different process for each one, but starting with HR and then escalating to the head of HR or getting to the actual insurer may be all things that may have to happen for that.
Perfect. And the next question involves if they switch employment and their individual is over the age of 26, does that transfer? And it sounds like it wouldn't, right? They would need to call their next HR department to request that.
You would have to ask your next HR department, and if you were changing jobs, I would ask about that. Like if you're talking about group health plan and you say I have a, medically dependent disabled adult child on my current health plan and I want to get the provisions on what I have to do to make sure that they can continue coverage on the new plan. So I would ask about that.
And we have a few more. Someone said that the $1,500 credit exists, and someone else shared that it's just horrible that our legislators have not put funding towards these services. And then they said when they have a job income, can they use transportation costs to offset the income?
Yeah, those are called for SSI. ERWIC's employment related work expenses, they have to be approved. You have to submit them. You can't just submit them and expect them to deduct that. But there is a program for deducting work related expenses. And there is also something called a student earned income exclusion. So if the person is getting SSI and they are a full-time student, between the ages of 18 and 22, and full-time for college is 8 hours, not 12 for a person with a disability. It could be homeschool, it could be high school, it could be a transition program, it could be university or community college. 18 and 22, full-time student, then you can have the student earned income exclusion apply, and they will not reduce their SSI for their income, and that's only that window between 18 and 22, and only if they're a student. And again, you have to ask for it. They don't just offer this up. You have to get it applied to their account over there at the Social Security Administration for that to apply.
Perfect. And then a few more things. There is the PDSES grant still. It stands for Special Student Population Special Education, I think, grant that exists. And then the last question was, we are enrolled in a post-high school 18+ program. Oh, sorry, they were just saying this one in a district's really amazing. And then the last real question was, do we wait until child is closer to 26 or fill out now their child is 17?
I would say you could wait till the child is much closer to age 26 if they're 17, because they're not getting kicked off of the group health plan until 26. So at 25, I would be having these intentional conversations with somebody in that way. So one said, what is the documentation that is needed to support SSDI, profit and loss statement? How much should a parent charge for rent? In general, I charged about $500 a month rent. I don't think the numbers matter anymore. It used to matter, and they would say, oh, they're not paying their fair share, or they're not paying fair market value, but some laws changed last year that made that not necessary anymore. So $350, $400, $500, whatever that amount is going to be fine. We do have a rent agreement that you can send in. As far as the financial documentation, not really a profit and loss statement, but just bank accounts. If the individual with a disability has a bank account, they're going to want to see the bank statements. If they have an ABLE account, they're going to want to see the ABLE statement. Special needs trust, they're going to want to see those. That's the kind of documentation that they're going to want to see. And then the last question, that the write-in questions that we had, and I intentionally, don't worry, we're going to get through the slides, intentionally went through these questions because usually when somebody writes in a question, somebody else has that question too, and we're all better for that. And see, just asking these veteran parents, and we already learned about another grant that we didn't know about, right? So so I think it's valuable. Someone said, what is the name that a house needs to be under? Is this a special needs trust or a trust? Well, in any case, a house, you can have one house and one car for Medicaid and SSI purposes. One house, it could be worth $5 million, doesn't matter. You could drive a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, doesn't matter. One house and one car. And it doesn't have to be in a special needs trust. Some families intend to leave a house to the individual with a disability in the future, and sometimes they leave the house outright to that individual, and sometimes they leave it in a special needs trust for that individual's benefit. Neither way is wrong, and for a lot of families, the reason that they leave it inside of the special needs trust is because they have concerns that the individual with a disability could be taken advantage of, and somebody could try to hoodoo them out of the house, is basically why. So if we have a person that has an intellectual disability, they can't handle money, they are pretty gullible and could easily be taken advantage of, then that might be an example of where you would want to have some protections in place to prevent the house being taken out from under them. But you don't have to have it in a trust. Okay.
We just had two more questions from the
Sure.
chat. Can they ask, please mention HIPP premium reimbursement program if one has private insurance, was one of the questions.
Okay. So the HIP, this is the Health Insurance Premium Reimbursement Program, the HIP program. Basically, this is where states will reimburse you for your private health insurance. If your health insurance is better and would pay more and would save Medicaid money, then they will basically reimburse you for your entire family, not just this kid, your entire family's health insurance premiums. So you can go online and you can type in HIP and how to apply, and you can apply for this. Some people swear by it and say they get this much a month. I get $1,000 a month reimbursement for this. Some people have found it to be a giant headache and they don't want to deal with it. I have heard it used to be a giant headache. I've heard that it's gotten better. And if anybody has any hip related experience in the chat, you can share that as well. But that is the health insurance reimbursement. So if the kid is covered on the private health insurance and getting Medicaid, I didn't say Medicare, Medicaid, then you can apply for HIP and you might get reimbursed for your family's health insurance premiums. Okay.
And then two more questions we have. If one loses Medicare QMB because of RSDI, will we lose Medicaid waiver too?
Now, if you lose the premium assistance for Medicare, that doesn't mean that you're going to lose Medicaid. A lot of times what will happen, and I want to prepare people for this, is when you switch over from SSI, and this is a whole other webinar. So, we qualify for SSI first, it's $967 a month. But when we have a disabled child whose disability started prior to age 22, not 26, 22, then they have the ability to be covered under a parent's record. So when the parent retires or goes on Social Security disability, then the child can switch over to childhood disability benefits, also called DAC, CDB, RSDI, or SSDI. And basically what happens is the kid stops getting $967 a month and they start getting 50% of the parent's record. So if the parent's getting $4,000 a month, then the kid starts getting $2,000 a month. So oftentimes you're going to get oh, by the way, you're off of Medicaid now, and you just need to reapply. If the kid was getting SSI and Medicaid first, you need to fill out a new H1200 form, and on that H1200 form, you need to say DAC Medicaid. They are a mandatory Medicaid group, so they can't deny them Medicaid. There's glitches in our system that it doesn't always move smooth. Like I had one client last year that it moved smooth and they didn't have to reapply, which means all clients that this happened to last year had to reapply, which is frustrating, and that's not what's supposed to happen. So it could happen to you, but you just need to fill out the new H1200 form. You need to write DAC Medicaid, mandatory Medicaid group, so it'll get routed to the right place, and then they'll restore the Medicaid. Medicaid waivers come with Medicaid. So if they don't qualify for SSI Medicaid, then they'll qualify for the Medicaid waiver. But it's very important to keep Medicaid in place at all times, because all of these are Medicaid waivers and they require Medicaid eligibility. So I want to just address one more thing, not in the chat box, not a question. However, one thing that is really important to know, because you might hear in like these parent groups, oh, well, your child switched over to RSDI. Well, then it doesn't matter how much money they have. Well, that's true for the RSDI program, but that is not true if they're getting a Medicaid waiver or if you want them to still get Medicaid. So you're always going to need to meet the Medicaid guidelines if they're getting a Medicaid waiver. Or you want them to keep Medicaid. So be careful what you hear and what you implement, because it could accidentally mess you up. So I'm going to move on. We'll come back to questions in a few, Caleb.
Cool. Yep, sounds good.
So for our Texas Medicaid home and community-based waivers, we've got the class waiver, the community living assistance and support services. We have deaf, blind, multiple disabilities. We have acronyms for all of these, the DBMD, say that fast 3 times. We've got the home and community-based services, HCS waiver. We have the Texas Home Living. We have MDCP, also known as the Medically Dependent Fragile Children's Program. We have the Star Plus waiver, which is an 1115 demonstration waiver. All states have these HCBS waivers and the 1115 demonstration waivers, okay? We have the YES waiver. This is the Youth Empowerment waiver. And then we have the Community First Choice waiver. So talking a little bit more about these, class gives home and community-based services to children and adults with related conditions. There's over 200 related conditions like cerebral palsy, spinal bifida. The related condition must have occurred prior to the child turning age 22. So then we have the deaf, blind, multiple disabilities, and that's exactly that, deaf and blind with multiple disabilities. And this is a much shorter waiting list. So we talked about 17 years, 20 years, 22 years. Deaf, blind, multiple disabilities is the much shorter waiting list because there's a lot fewer people that hit that criteria for deaf, blind, and multiple disabilities. So then we've got the HCS waiver. This gives services and supports to children and adults with an intellectual disability, which in general 70 or below, 75 and below with multiple disabilities. or a related condition who live in their own homes or a small group home with no more than 4 people. Okay, so that's the HCS waiver. Then we have MDCP. This gives services to children and adults who are under age 20 or younger, who are medically fragile, as an alternative to receiving services in a nursing facility. Okay, so when I think of MDCP, I don't think of high functioning autism. I think of autism with the individual that doesn't speak and has no ability to perform any activities of daily living. I think of somebody who has a trach or a G tube or is on a ventilator. Severely medically fragile is who is going to qualify for this. Your average run of the mill, I've got a disability, but I don't have equipment or that kind of stuff, a suction, a G tube, a trach, the ventilator. There's limited people that are going to qualify for MDCP that don't hit that criteria. So then we have the Star Plus. This gives services to adults age 21 and older to keep them in their community and not in a nursing home. Services are offered through a managed care organization. You can get on the list at age 21, and the list is not as long as some of these others. Caleb, you were saying about how long, did you say 4 to 6 months? Is that what you said earlier today?
Yeah, it can vary, like 4 to 6 months I've heard or less, depending on, I guess, maybe in the county and what the MCOs have available for space.
Got it. Okay. So Texas Home Living, this gives services to children and adults with intellectual disability or related condition who live in their own home or their family home. The Yes waiver, this is a 1915C waiver. Again, other states have the 1915C. It's a Medicaid program that gives home and community-based services to children under age 19 with serious mental, emotional, and behavioral difficulties. Think that the police have been involved. There may have been assault charges. There might be drug problems. There may be the alphabet soup of mental health diagnoses of bipolar, borderline personality disorder, all of the different acronyms that you may hear for mental health. The youth empowerment is designed to give the family some help. It's a good waiver, and a lot of counties do not have a waiting list for the Yes waiver. So I like to just mention that isn't 17 years, because as you guys know, if you've got someone that's dealing with mental health challenges, the situation's the boss and you need help now. So this is not long. What do you think about the Yes waiver, Caleb?
Yeah, I was also going to share, from my understanding, Yes waiver is one of the few waivers that will automatically give the individual Medicaid. They won't need to apply for Medicaid to get it. At least that's how it works here in Travis County. The student will just automatically get Medicaid to enable them to receive the Yes waiver. Also here, I'm not sure about other counties. Ours is they utilize wraparound case management, so it is intensive case management with weekly meetings occurring.
It's good. It is a very good program. So we just want people to know about that. Community first choice. This is an entitlement. The list isn't very long, typically a year or less. It allows states to provide home and community-based attendant services and supports to Medicaid recipients with disabilities. It helps with activities of daily living, health-related tasks, hands-on assistance, supervision or cueing services to help the individual learn how to care for themselves. And these services are going to be offered from a managed care organization as well. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the services and waivers. Services available in all waivers: adaptive aids, financial management services, supported employment, employment assistance, some minor home modifications, respite. Services in all but MDCP, professional therapies, OT, PT, speech therapy, music, massage, rec, equine, art, unlimited prescriptions, dental, and nursing. Okay, so a lot of these, when we talk about being able to stay in home and community-based services, a lot of these waivers, depending on what they are, may provide attendant services or respite services, where you will be able to have a caregiver to help out with some of the responsibility. Some of the waiver services include transportation, residential services, equine therapy, day hab, and nursing. A lot of the waivers, not all, not class, not yes, not Star Plus, but most of the other waivers in Texas do require an intellectual disability with an IQ of below 70, which is unfortunate because a lot of people have some pretty serious disabilities, but maybe don't have a low IQ. But that is the way that it works here, and that does not mean that that's how it works in every state, because again, every state has waivers, but they're a little bit different. So most waivers are for all ages except for the MDCP, yes, and the Star Plus are the exceptions. For all waivers, the income limit is 300% of SSI. SSI for 2025 is $967 a month, so that takes it to $2901 a month. So basically, if the child with the disability's income is less than $2901 a month, it does not look at parental income, then they can still qualify for a Medicaid waiver. And they must meet the functional eligibility criteria, which I was talking about. Some of these are intellectual disability, and the eligibility is not determined until the individual comes up on the waiting list, not when they go on the waiting list. Caleb, do we have a couple of related questions right now?
Yeah, we have a few. I was also going to share too for some of these waivers. Could you go back one more slide? I just wanted to see on there real quick. Let's see. What was it? There was a oh, the income limit too. So that income limit that she's talking about is specific to Medicaid. If you want your individual to still receive benefits under SSI, they still have to meet that 2,000 a month income limit, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, because
It's
if you
not
want
an
to keep
income
Medicaid
limit, it's an
or
asset
earn
limit. The
asset limit, right?
$2,000 is an asset limit.
Not the earned.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. And then so specific questions to this. Let's see. So there's some good amount of chats in here. Uh, do you want me to start from the top? There's a good amount in here. Is that okay?
Yeah, just give me, I'll take two or three and then we'll keep
Okay.
moving.
Perfect. So let's see. I know a few families who make 200,000 per year still and have Medicaid paying for their kids' services like home nursing therapies. How is it possible? Does MDCP and HCS have no income limits? And it's
Yeah,
probably because
again, MDCP and HCS are Medicaid waivers, and it's based off of the kid's income and assets, not the parents. When we're talking about Medicaid, like SSI Medicaid or straight up Medicaid, not under a Medicaid waiver, that's where it comes in. If the kid is under age 18, it's based off of the parents' income and assets. But so in this example, the kid is probably getting either an HCS waiver or an MDCP waiver, which does not count the parental income.
right. Let's see another specific one. They were just asking the intellectual score, was it 70 or 75 or below?
It's basically 70 and below or 75 and below with multiple disabilities. So if they have more than one disability, and a lot of our kids do, I mean, they come with comorbid conditions. They may have autism, but they may have anxiety and depression and bipolar too. Or, I mean, there could be a lot of different disabilities that come along with some of the disabilities. Somebody that has Down syndrome also may have cardiac issues. They also may have a history of leukemia. Those are things that might come common with a Down syndrome diagnosis. So it would be multiple disabilities, not just Down syndrome. Down syndrome, that in itself is a disability, but it also comes along with intellectual disability. So there's two right there, right?
Right. Exactly. And then these are two questions that are kind of similar. Does ADHD and OCD with autism qualify for yes waiver? And then someone else said their son just reached 19 years old. Can they apply for yes waiver and have autism?
If he just turned 19, I don't know. And for the yes waiver, and the yes waiver, the primary diagnosis needs to be more mental health
Yeah.
things. So if we have somebody who has autism, and I really don't like the terms of low, moderate, and high functioning, I just don't like that label. But for the sake of this conversation, if we have somebody that has autism and they are high functioning, and maybe they have some anxiety and OCD and depression and some other things, then they may qualify. But in the example that we have somebody that is autism and they're nonverbal and would be considered otherwise low functioning, autism is the primary diagnosis, and we can't even get to the other, and they're not going to qualify for the yes waiver. And so you can check with your local intellectual disability authority if they just turned 19, that maybe you still have some time, that during the year of the 19th year, you can check on that. But in general, it is 19 and younger. Did I answer that question fully, Caleb, or was there one more piece?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think you're right with the age. I may have seen till 22, but you're right. Mental health diagnosis needs to be the primary issue occurring for the individual, not the disability itself to
It
qualify
can't
for the yes
be
waiver.
like the primary diagnosis is Down syndrome in this
Right.
example for the yes waiver. The primary diagnosis needs to be mental health stuff. It could be
Exactly.
schizoaffective, schizophrenia, it could be anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline, it could be OCD, it could be ADHD. Those are, I
Hmm.
mean, there's all these little, disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, DMDD. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
bunch, right? But that needs to be more of the
Focal point.
of the diagnosis. Okay,
Hmm.
so the interest list is a first come, first serve. The waiting list can be as long as 17 years. And we, again, in the last couple weeks have heard 20 to 22 years in Texas. May not be true in your state. If you're not in Texas, you may not even have a waiting list. There are, and it's designed to, divert individuals from institutions. So it's, these people are at risk of being placed outside of their home is what we're hoping to prevent on these. So on the waiting list, we've talked all about this waiting list, and this is specifically for Texas. How do you get on the list? What is a LIDA? A LIDA is a local intellectual disability authority, developmental disability authority. Each county, and you guys are going to get a copy of today's slides and a link to the recording. This link right here is, I'm going to take you to a county list, and you put your county in and it tells you who your LIDA is. There's Bluebonnet Trails, there's Texana, there's the Harris Center. They're all across the state. So it just depends on what county you are in. Your local intellectual disability authority is going to run the list for HCS, Texas Home Living Community First Choice. Star Plus has a separate phone number. MDCP class and DBMD, the deafblind and multiple disabilities, has a separate phone number. And I just want to make this clear to you because some people call their local authority and they think that they're on all of the list. And then about 7 years later, they figure out that they weren't on the class or the MDCP list after all, right? So you want to make sure, you have to understand that the LIDA does not control this list up here. It's a separate phone number. The LIDA doesn't control Star Plus. It's a separate phone number yet. And then the LIDA does control the HCS, Texas Home Living and Community First Choice. So you're going to want to go ahead and get them on all of the list. So one of the things that you need to know is that there is a new way to look online. So it used to be in Texas that if you wanted to know where your child was on the list, then you simply had to call your LIDA and call the class phone number and find out where they are on the list. Couple years ago, they have moved this to where you can look online to see where your child is on the list. And this made me very happy because I thought, really, all these people that have a loved one with a disability have to call one person in the county? How could that one person in the county ever get anything done if they're just fielding calls telling people where they are on the list? So this is going to be on your Texas benefits. Other states have other lists where they keep them, but ours is going to be on our Medicaid login. This is your Texas benefits. So you'll go to yourtexasbenefits.com. You're going to log into your account. If you don't already have an account, then create one before moving forward. And this kind of just shows where you can create that account. So then what is going to happen is you're going to see on the right hand side, there's going to be something called quick links, and it's going to say interest list manager. Sorry, it's blurry. It's the best we could do adding this to the slide, but it'll say interest list manager. You're going to click on that, and it's going to take you to another. You're going to click on this, a few more clicks, view details, and then it's going to show where are you on the list. Okay, community living assistance, here's class, here's HCS, here's Texas Home Living. How, where are you on the list, and how many people are on the list. Okay. And then there is a button of join interest list. So some of them you may be able to join by just creating this account. So I just wanted to let people know that you can absolutely check this nowadays on your own, and I do encourage you to do that. If you don't see all of the waivers you expected, that you have put your child on the list, you can call the 800 number for class MDCP and deafblind multiple disabilities. And then again, the website for your LIDA, your local intellectual disability authority. Now, one thing, Caleb, that people ask me all the time is if I get on the list, let's just say, for instance, that I live in Fort Bend County and I got on the list at Texana. And then I changed up and I moved to Houston. And now my LIDA is Harris County because it changes if you move. You do not lose your place in line. You will get a new LIDA, but you are not going to lose your place in line. And it is important to let both LIDAs know. You need to let Fort Bend know that you moved to Harris. You need to let Harris know that you moved from Fort Bend so your case can be properly routed the way it needs to be. Okay.
I
All
agree.
right.
I was just gonna say real quick, we had a family who did not talk to the LIDA and they got a letter sent to their old address just to check updates on address, and they didn't reach back out, so they actually lost their slot because they just never updated anything since they didn't know where they went.
That's a
So
good
definitely talk to
point.
your LIDA.
The LIDA is supposed to reach out to you every 2 years, and I've always thought this is silly to ask me if I still want to be on the list. And I think, don't ask me. If I don't want to be on the list, I will let you know. You don't have to ask me every 2 years if I want to be on the list. I want to be on the list. But that's the way it is, whether it's silly or not, it is the way that it is. So you do need to pay attention to that. You do need to update your email address, your address, your phone number, if that changes, because if they can't find you, they will remove you from the list. It's not a joke. So, crisis diversion slot. There is a such thing that moves you from a 17 to 20-year waiting list to right now. This is a crisis diversion slot. It's an HCS crisis diversion slot. It's only for the HCS waiver. This is if your loved one is a threat to themselves or others, if they are at risk of being placed outside the home, if there is a family crisis, maybe a parent has died, maybe someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness and the other parent needs to take care of that person. Maybe the parents' parents are terminally ill and now mom as the caregiver needs to take care of her own mom, and it's a crisis because the child is full care and can't be left alone or what. All I would say is that could move you from a 17-year waiting list to right now. And so I hope the crisis doesn't happen in your life, but if it does, don't miss the crisis and the opportunity to get your child on the HCS crisis diversion. All states have crisis diversion slots. And so this isn't, casual, but all of those things that I just mentioned happen. Like we had a guy, the grandpa, he had custody of his um, uh, uh, adult grandchild on the autism spectrum, schizoaffective disorder. He was mean and aggressive. Grandma was the caregiver. Grandma died. Grandpa still worked. Grandpa was providing the insurance for said kid. And he was at risk of being placed outside the home. Grandpa was at risk of losing his job. Grandma died. That was a crisis. Okay. That was an example of a crisis of somebody that got a crisis diversion slot. So you're always going to work with your local intellectual disability authority on that. If you're not getting the help that you need, then there is help. You can always reach out to Caleb at the ARC of the Capitol. And then Caleb, could you take a moment and tell us
Yeah.
about PASSAR?
Yeah, for sure. I was also going to just share again for the crisis diversion. We've helped a lot with the ARC here in the Travis County getting these for students and adults. Just really, you want to make sure and prove the need of it is like if the individual is eloping, running away from home at risk of harming themselves or others. I've even seen someone who is starving themselves. Those are cases that you can really build up that narrative to prove the need for a crisis diversion because your local authority is going to submit it to HHS, to the state of Texas, to a board of doctors to decide if they're going to approve for your loved one to skip that 20-year wait list to start getting HCS services. So you really just want to show and prove that need. Also, your local CRCG may be another location to help with that. So for PASSAR specifically, pre-admission screening and resident review, diversion, this is primarily for individuals who are at risk of nursing home placement due to medical need and other needs. For instance, we've had individuals with disabilities do not belong in nursing homes, especially a lot of times you may see individuals under an older age being placed there. If an individual is at risk of being placed in a nursing home or is placed in a nursing home, a PASSAR diversion should be initiated, and it's usually initiated through the local authority to help them skip the 20-year wait list to get HCS right away so that they can then move into a group home or host home setting in the community. And I've seen this about 2 or 3 times. We had an individual who was in his 40s who had diabetes and was at risk of nursing home placement due to diabetes. They were able to get a PASSAR diversion and skip the 20-year wait list without actually being placed in the nursing home. So that was helpful.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. All right, so, and we've just got a few minutes left and we'll kind of get through these last slides and then we'll take any remaining questions that we have. So when it comes to, special needs planning, I mentioned this in the beginning, you're going to want to work with a special needs planner to formulate your plan. When it comes to planning, our planning plate is big. When we have to plan for 25 to 35 years in retirement for ourselves, but then we have to plan for 25 to 35 years after we're gone for the individual with the disability, it's like another retirement bucket. So we talked about the difference between a special needs planner and a special needs attorney. So knowing that and working with true specialists when it comes to your planning, whether you work with us or you work with somebody else, work with a specialist. It's really, really important. We want you to gather all the necessary planning documents. What are these? These are what benefits do you already have in place? Health insurance, life insurance, disability, long-term care. What investments do you already have in place? 401k, 403b, annuities, pensions, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, those are all things that you're going to use to fund your retirement and possibly the special needs trust in the future. We talk about developing a letter of intent, and a letter of intent, I liken that to a family love letter. You know more about your loved one with a disability than anybody will ever know. And if something happens to you and you can't communicate those wishes, this letter of intent spells everything out for the person that might step into your shoes. So if you've never heard of this before, check out the letter of intent on our YouTube channel. And then we want you to think about your vision of how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but also you. What is your vision for your retirement? Our sense of retirement is a little bit different if we have a child that's going to live with us for the rest of our life, and there needs to be balance. I had a very specific conversation with a family yesterday, and I was telling the mom, look, you got to take a break. You're going to have a heart attack. There's so much stress going on right now, and moms and dads are always trying to wear all these hats, and it's a lot. Okay. So you want to preserve the eligibility for state and federally funded programs. Again, we're talking about SSI and Social Security. We talked a little bit and we hit the highlights on a special needs trust and ABLE accounts. We have entire webinars on all of these topics. An ABLE account is organized under the 529A Act and the tax code, and you can contribute $19,000 a year and an additional $15,560 if the person is working up to their earnings amount. The disability had to start prior to age 26, and then 2026 the disability had to start prior to age 46. That number is going up, but we've got entire presentations on all of these topics. And the thing is if you guys have ever felt confused, this is confusing. It's a lot of information. And that's why we take a deeper dive into each one of these topics on an individual basis, webinar basis, and it's all out there. So when it comes to planning, I always just say, hey, let's not beat ourselves up about what you haven't done. Some people have done a ton of planning, and they want to work with us because they want a second opinion or a look under the hood. Do I have it right? Is the money in the right buckets? Is there anything that you would change? Are there any other programs that we should be applying for that I don't know? Some people have not done any planning at all, and some people have gotten started, but it got put on the shelf because life got busy and they just need to pick up where they left off. So don't beat yourself up about where you are in the planning process. You're here today, and it's about picking up and moving forward from where you are right now. We have entire presentations on college planning for special needs, including people that have an intellectual disability. And we have post-high school options and webinars on, what should we be thinking about post-high school. So you're going to want to look at those. We suggest consider touring transition programs, partial care, full care. Waiting lists can be very, very long. And I'm not saying that your loved one is going to live outside of your home, but maybe one day you won't be able to provide the care that you once did. Maybe you're on here and you want some autonomy from your child. You want them to grow, and you want to have some semblance of retirement that you hoped for. And so maybe a partial residential or residential living situation might be healthy for everybody involved. So we just want to mention that. And then we also like to mention that we want people to make careful considerations before naming a sibling as a future caregiver. And I always just remind people that your kids have hopes and dreams. You had hopes and dreams. Your other neurotypical kids also have hopes and dreams, and they may not be able to achieve their goals that they hoped for if they are saddled up with being a caregiver for a sibling. So just consider that. So we've kind of talked about a lot of the things to keep on your radar. Future care cost estimate. We've talked about the Texas waivers and Medicaid waivers throughout the U.S. SSI, SSDI, ABLE accounts, special needs trust, residential, some guardianship. We have entire presentations on guardianship, so that's not something that we can talk about in 30 seconds. But it is out there on the website. So today, everybody's going to get a copy of today's slides with a link to the upcoming webinars. You can register for any of the upcoming ones that you're interested in. We work on a collaborative team here at CPG, and we always look forward to working with you, and we always offer free personalized consultations. This QR code will take you to a website that will allow you to book your free personalized consultation. If you have questions that we weren't able to answer today, or you need to go deeper, or maybe it's a little bit more personal question. We are out of time, but I'm going to take two more questions, Caleb, so throw them at
Perfect.
me.
Yes. So my son is 22, I believe, or D syndrome, and he has ADHD, learning and developmental delays. I do not know where or how to start. His IQ is currently around 70, but research shows it reduces over time. Currently, our household income is too much. When can I apply?
Did she say the age?
Let me see. I think they're 22 is what she meant to say, their age. I'm not sure though. I did
So the Medicaid waivers, I mean, I would
17,
get
17 they are.
at 17, I would definitely get him on any of the Medicaid waiver interest list. I would not apply for SSI and Medicaid until he turns 18.
And then can you use components of IQ that are significantly below 70, but other components make the total IQ just above 70? Typically, I've seen them use full scale IQ when looking at IQ.
It's usually the full scale IQ, but they will take into consideration multiple disabilities. So the thing is everything isn't a slam dunk, and it would be so much easier if everything was just a slam dunk. But there are a lot of one-offs, and there are a lot of scenarios that may work out that you may think aren't going to work out. So what I would say is, if you need help, reach out. There is help for you. And this YouTube channel was born out of my own frustration on why is everything so hard. I have kids, I have adult kids with disabilities, and I eat, sleep, and breathe this. I do this every day of my life. I know this both personally and professionally, and I still think it's hard. So if you have felt like this is really hard, or I feel overwhelmed, or if you walked to the mailbox and got a letter from Health and Human Services or Medicaid or the Social Security Administration and literally cried, hey, you are not alone. So it is, but the more knowledge is power. The more you know, and how to navigate these systems is going to be really, really important. So Caleb, thank you for being here
Of
with
course.
us
Thank
today
you.
in the ARC of the capital area. Thank you everyone for your
Of course.
write-in questions and your awesome questions today. And if we didn't get to all of them, I apologize, but do reach out to us, and we will be happy to have a free personalized consultation with you as well. So thanks so much, and have a great afternoon. Bye now.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.